Bill Clinton's presidency had stalled almost all political progress made by Nixon and Reagan for the Republicans. Scandals towards the end of the Clinton administration made the presidency a wide-open race, setting up a push from the Republicans with the turn of the century. George W. Bush's political agenda had shaped around his Christian fundamentalism as he desired to return the country to the values and policies of the late 19th century. In 1989, he became part of the owner of the Texas Rangers in order to demonstrate his skills in the business sector, and he went on to become the governor of Texas in order to pad his resume for president. As governor, he passed very conservative legislation such as stiffening testing standards in education and strengthening the work requirement for welfare recipients, helping him get a great deal of support from the Republican Party going into the 2000 presidential election. Bush's traditional values helped him to win the presidency even though Nixon won the majority vote, a split that showed in Congress as the Senate was very evenly split between the two parties and the House was narrowly in the Republican favor. In his first term, Bush proposed $1.75 trillion in tax cuts, adding several billion dollars to the education budget, pushed funding for faith-based social programs, and developed a 10-year, $400 billion plan to help prescription drug measures for Medicaid. Critics were very concerned about the potential economic inequality, lack of funds, and push for a connection between church and state that caused the policies to still be met with opposition before being passed. Upon the attacks of 9/11, Bush's approval rating went through the roof. He declared a war on terrorism and persuaded Congress to grant him authority to use military force on any form of global terrorism, helping him gain support countrywide. Due to the war, Congress only passed the Patriot Act and Bush's No Child Left Behind Act. Most domestic policies were stalled by the start of the war. Bush's approval rating took a hit with the 2002 stock market crash that cost the American economy trillions of dollars. Various corporations used fraudulent accounting to keep their stock prices high, and when all of this came to a boil in 2002, many people feared that this was only the tip of the iceberg and experienced economic turmoil and a distrust towards the economy. Bush was able to turn this poor viewing around with his shift in foreign policy. He became the aggressor in the war on terror, enacting a zero-tolerance policy allowing preemptive strikes against any nation that helps terrorist organizations. Bush's foreign policies were met with criticism around the globe, with some fearing another Vietnam-like fiasco. There are many critics of these controversial policies, but due to the events on 9/11 2 years ago, many people feared a return of terrorism to the states and supported the war fueled by patriotism. Many critics of the Democratic Party's platform believed that Clinton had led the Democratic Party too far to the center and needed to return further to the liberal left. Kerry became the 2004 Democratic nominee but proved no match as Bush won the presidency and the Republicans gained further control of the House and Senate. However, he did not obtain enough backing in Congress to combat the inevitable stalemate in legislative action due to opposition from a more liberal Democratic Party. In 2005, the occupation of Iraq turned into a nightmare. Democratic elections were held following the capture of Saddam Hussein. However, the elected government became corrupt and tribal warfare broke out between the radical groups and Muslims. The blame for this is put on the U.S. not for being able to provide sufficient resources to monitor the situation, and the lack of progress lost support among the American people. During the second term, the Supreme Court made a few surprising decisions. Although the court was still fairly conservative in nature, it was deeply divided when it came to ideology. The court returned rulings on affirmative action and gay rights cases that tend to be more liberal in nature, shocking most court experts and hurting the Bush administration. Once Hurricane Katrina hit, Bush's ratings continued to fall. Due to a lack of natural disasters in the country and a push to privatize management of government programs, there was a decrease in proper funding for FEMA, and the government was blindsided by this disaster. Many citizens of the city of New Orleans were left homeless, living in extremely dangerous environments without the proper resources to recover. The process of responding and reconstruction of the city was handled so poorly by the administration that the approval ratings plummeted among the American people. Come 2006, the Republicans lost control of Congress during the midterm elections. Democrats made a resounding comeback due to the lack of support for the war and how poorly Katrina was handled. Even with a swing in the conservative direction by the Supreme Court, the Republican Party took a great hit at the end of the Bush administration.
Created using Powtoon.